I will say, are you ready for some crazy beans that I was thinking of last night? I was
Yes,
dreaming
I
about
am
this.
actually. All right.
Um, okay, so you know how a year or two back, um, we had Taylor Hall went to Buffalo on a 1 year deal. Uh, I thought it was a really good idea for Taylor because he could go to Buffalo, play in Buffalo, have some fun, try to play with Jack Eichel. Obviously, didn't work out. Um, and then I'm assuming in his thought process is like at the deadline, I could probably be moved to a cup contender. I think a lot of players are starting to realize that they can do that. Hey, I'm going to purposely sign for a bad team, go be good on this bad team, and then instead of picking one of the better teams to go play for in the off season and just fingers crossed that it doesn't fall out, I want to get to the playoffs, right? You purposely go to a bad team, play there till the deadline, and then get traded to a good team where you're more likely to go play in the playoffs, right? Because then you know, like, oh, this team's a wagon, and I'm getting traded to them. Like, oh, okay, great. Um, what if, what if GM Bill Armstrong puts out a deal for Nazem Kadri for like 9.5 to 10 mil to come to the Coyotes, and then
Mm-hmm.
at the deadline, he 50% retains on Kadri so that he's 5 mil.
Well, do you remember that? I forget who said it, but do you remember that one like Twitter account that, or it might have been like an actual journo on there was like, oh, Kadri like could get an offer from Arizona. That was a stupid like rumor because it was like a multi-year. But
Yeah.
when you put it into that context, Kadri said he only wants to sign with a contender.
Mm-hmm.
90% of the contenders, where's their cap space?
Yep.
So it's one of those things where, I mean, also you might be seeing that. I haven't personally noticed that aspect of, oh, I can sign with a bad team and get traded. But when you package it like that, when you're like, hey, you can actually see what teams are good, increasing your likelihood to make the playoffs, when that time comes,
Yep.
I can see that working. I don't want Kadri on the Coyotes. I don't like Kadri's game. He won't, people like him, whatever, cool. I think he's a dirty player, so I'm not a big fan. I wouldn't even want him on here for that because I have a feeling that with our luck, getting a guy like Kadri, the wheels would fall out, and we would get no value for him.
Yeah, I mean,
That
you'd only
yeah.
sign him to like a 1 year deal.
Yeah,
That
it would
was.
only be a 1 year, but if you're stuck
Mm-hmm.
with him for the year and you can't get anything for him, it essentially, not quite as bad, but it becomes Dmitry Yaskin. Like so that's why I'm just me personally. That's a good idea. It's a good concept. Who else is available on free agency that we could try that with? Kadri is just a name that I don't want
I
to
mean,
be anywhere near.
I know Subban's still out there. I doubt Subban, the wheels have really fallen off, unfortunately. He's
Which
definitely.
sucks. I wouldn't
Yeah.
mind having him here for like some community stuff and some jersey sales because honestly,
Mhm.
he's a really good guy in the community. I
Yeah,
big
he
fan of
is.
PK.
Yeah, I am a big fan of PK as well. And honestly, like if you want to talk about a guy who can keep the rookies out, he would
Mm-hmm.
work. But the problem is that the Coyotes have so many defensemen right now. Like it's not even funny. So I don't see that really being a thing.
Maybe he goes
I
back to Montreal. Maybe they can they
I've
can
heard
right that wrong.
I've heard people say that, and I think it could happen, right? Because he still loves Montreal. Like he still visits all the time. I think he still has a house there. He still has the children's wing, which he put a lot of money into. I think he donated over like $1 million to this hospital to put another like child wing on, and they called the wing, the Subban wing or whatever. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like he really does care about that community, and he really cares about Montreal. I mean, I could see it. It you don't have the previous general manager there anymore, so there's not nearly as much bad blood. You don't have the same coach. You like the only thing that's the same would be a few players, right, and then the owner. So we don't know what the owner said about PK in the past or anything like that. Um, so if we could presume that everything was left on a pretty good term, which I think it was. I don't remember there being bad blood with the trade. It was just kind of one of those things where it was like, all right, we need to move on. It makes a lot of sense of why not.
Because they're supposed to be bad, so they don't need PK to be as electrifying as he was. I think I recall like reading or hearing that it was some bad blood between like the coach and him, and or the GM and coach and him. So it's one of those things where those are probably the biggest two pieces that now that they're gone, makes a lot more sense for PK to potentially go back. But it would be really good. Cynical for a second, it'd be really good PR. It'd also be really good for mending fences with one of. Obviously, he's not going to be like a top 10 great in their franchise or anything, but he was an electrifying player for a long time, and he was someone that I think it would be really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And screw it, we'll bring Phil Kessel back because obviously nobody wants to sign him. We'll give him $1 million for the year.
I'm curious to see what's going to happen with Phil, because that's an interesting one with me. I think that the Coyotes do actually like Phil quite a bit, like as a room guy. Like, I think if you want to talk about good guy awards, like, people like to harp on Phil for being, oh, he's not much of a team player, he doesn't put as much effort in. Like, I think the guys in the locker room really like him and respect him. And that's one of those things where, like, if it's going to be another long off season, or sorry, not off season, a long just regular season, I mean, if nobody's picking Phil up, right? Does he come back to Arizona? Hey, we'll give you time. You want that Iron Man streak to continue? We got nothing going on, right? So I don't know. I really don't know. It's interesting though. Like, so many people wanted to pound on him for being, falling back offensively, but when you look, what was Phil's greatest asset? It was his shot, right? But he didn't really have very many goals this year. But then you look at the assist category, he still has the hands. Like, he had 44 assists, and when you watched him, like, he could still make some really good passes. He played really well with Lawson Krause.
It's one of those things where it's like, I stand by all the criticism I've ever given him, where it's like he definitely wasn't a team player in the context of you're hurt, why are you eating up a roster spot and being a liability, this or that. But I'm a critic. I'm a amateur reporter, whatever. I'm a critic. If the guys in the locker room like him, and you're making a decision from a hockey perspective, and you want that locker room to be everyone's nice and close, you want good morale, what does it matter what someone like me thinks? Genuinely. Like, I mean, what does it matter what I think in general? But, I mean, if he could provide some sort of value to that context, I say do it. I say a 1 year... Screw it, give him 2.5 because, veteran will give you a little more, whatever, and then it's just, hey, it's easier to move on from 2.5 or retain, and you're moving a $1.25 million contract. It's easier to do that than it was, what was his cap hit, 8 or 7 million last year, whatever it was, so it was harder to get rid of him.
Yeah, I think it was 8 million.
So it's just, look, I said it, I know you said you didn't think there was value to it. I'm like, look, I don't know who else is going to be able to guarantee him ice time. I don't know who else wants to deal with the Philadelphia Keith Yandle thing. So I'm like, I think it makes sense to bring him back next year. Then again, I'm also the kind of person, I'm like, hey, you want to get some butts and seats? Bring Keith Yandle back too? Screw it. Look, I'm a big proponent for bringing the band. If we're not building anything, like that season, obviously we want to get some rookies in there, we want to get some more time, but if we know we're not going to be good, like, what would it have hurt to bring back McHale for a year? What would it have hurt to bring back Jans or to bring back, Laurent Dauphin? He's back now. Like, what would it hurt to have a little bit of fanfare and just do something that's like for the fans, for the whatever? Like, I don't see that hurting. It hurts when you're trying to push for a playoff spot and you're like, hey, Keith Yandle's a defensive liability. What, the fans like him, so we'll keep him. Like, no, we're not at that point, so why not have a little fun with it?
Yeah, I mean, it insulates a rookie from being in that losing atmosphere, right? Because that's the biggest worry when you're tanking like this, and this is why it has always consistently been a problem. Perfect example is Buffalo. I know we use them as an example too much, but we do. You tank intentionally to be bad to get good players, and they did that. They absolutely did that. They tanked intentionally to get good players, and they got good players. The problem is that those young kids who came in during those tank seasons only knew how to lose. They didn't have the drive or that anger to want to win every game, because they were so used to being, oh, we lost. Oh well. Yes.
And then just to add into that, I didn't want to just jump in, because even if they have that to start, you can only take so much losing before, even if it's not voluntary, part of you stops caring. Yep. And the second you do that and it seeps into the core, it's like that's why I really liked what they did last year, and I really liked how it bothered them to go winless in the first, 11, 13, whatever. It bothered them to be a bottom 5 team. You could tell these guys were trying every single night, and that's the atmosphere you need to create, because obviously you can only lose so much before the bottom falls out, before some guys just kind of lose the drive, which is also why it's like, bring in guys that have motivation. Hey, I can get traded to a better team. Hey, this is one of my last shots at getting an NHL contract. I want to show that I can still be in the league. Look what, Strawman, I think he played well. All things considered, I wouldn't even mind if he came back for one more year. I don't think he does. I think he probably ends up retiring, but I'm just saying, you want to bring that in because you want as much drive to win as possible. And even if you have to kind of I feel like they didn't patch it together optimally, because it's hard. It's not just, hey, like a video game, you can just throw these guys in here, but it's just, you have to find the right combination of everything, and also building that culture of winning from the AHL. You want guys going to the AHL competing in the playoffs, knowing what it's like to prepare for playoff hockey, knowing what it's like to hey, this is how we win. Even though it's at a lower level, they're used to winning.
Yep.
Give them to the NHL, you get a locker room that's like, I want to win. We're a bottom 5 team. I still want to win. I'm going out there 110% every night. That's culture.
Yeah.
That is what you need to build, and it's really, really easy to mess that up. Like the hockey guy, I think he said it very well when he's like, it's always easy to tear down. It's actually kind of fun to tear down. It's just, hey, tear it up, blow it up. This guy's going here, all these assets. How do you build it back up?
Yep.
That is the hardest part in any league, but especially the hockey. It's just
Yep.
It's a culture thing and a drive thing, really, like personnel.
Well,